Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So, I wanted to play something old, specifically, you know, an old JRPG. So in this case, it's going to be The Last Remnant. If you don't know, this was the Unreal Engine 3 games that came out all around the same time. It was basically, from Square Enix, it was basically like Lost Odyssey, the Last Remnant in this case, and then like Blue Dragon or something. There were a couple other things. There was like a gun kata, you know, fun JRPG that came out around the same time. So all this like Unreal Engine 3 stuff prior to Unreal Engine 4. Just play it by ear. They had this cool kind of army system that was really unique to the game.
You and me then. That all you got?
Oh. Obviously, this is just like an extended tutorial. That's not a big deal.
We should strike at their flank.
Yeah, it's honestly really interesting. Just that back during the age of, you know, early 360 era, people were really willing to try out new gameplay concepts. So in this case, it was a JRPG that is kind of like an army management simulator, where every single unit represents a squad of 4 units. In many ways, you could say that this is the company of heroes of JRPGs. And it just
This isn't even worth
really
my time.
towards the tail end of that experimental phase where people were willing to essentially give anything a shot if, you know, with a decent amount of funding and some sort of design document. These companies, like Square Enix, which is one example, but you have the major publishers like Ubisoft, Bethesda, and everything else, they would essentially just take on a chance. They take on a risk. So in this case, this is a JRPG that is squad-based, kind of a unique concept. Just like at the same time we had the gun kata JRPG, where everybody was not using, you know, force implements. They were using guns. And this all came out around the same time. So again, I'm showing off this one because it's actually impossible to find on Steam anymore. It's basically, you know, like the PT of JRPGs. You cannot download this game anymore. The squad-based JRPG that is, you know, similar in quality to Lost Odyssey, probably a little worse, and coming out around the same time. But it really is just illustrative of a unique time in game development that people are very nostalgic for now, which is the PS2 and 360 eras of game development.
Arena?
And it is basically this.
Who are you?
Even if a game is not amazing,
That's what
or
I
over
should
the
be asking
charts,
you.
Wait, hold on.
it can be a unique concept theorized and presented by an employee of the publisher. So whoever came up with this design document and said, hey, I want to create a squad-based JRPG that has RTS elements, and just, you know, have that be something different from, you know, Kingdom Hearts, for example. A little bit different than Persona, for example. A little bit different than Final Fantasy, for example. And you would get these one-off titles that
Is
you
that
could just
you,
play,
Blockta?
and they'd just be like
I'm
a pleasant
fine.
surprise.
I can see a light in the distance. That should be the way out.
And it kind of reminds me of why people are so excited for a lot of the AA titles that you would get nowadays. So, you know, Astro
Hey!
Boy, or just
Wait up, lady.
Astrobot is
What's
like
going on?
a really big game people are excited
The gay
about for the
bulb blew a
PS5.
hole in the ground,
Well,
and
like,
now
of
we're in
course you're
this cave.
excited for that
Anything
because
else obvious
even
you'd
like
like
a
pointed out?
7 out of 10, even just like a decent video game
At
that is
least the
different
exit
from
isn't
other video
far.
games is such a rarity these days that it's automatically Game of the Year.
Hey, wait! Listen to me.
Like, I would say that Wukong
Hey!
is probably on the quality level of something like this that we would get all the time.
I'll hear whatever you have to
You know,
say
an
once
8
we
out of
get out of
10,
here.
a 7 out
Your
of 10.
story better be good, spy.
7.5 out of 10.
do
Just
you
like
mean,
a
spy?
decent video game with
Think
a
about
novel
it,
concept
genius.
is
Why
enough
else
to
would you be
blow
on a
people's
battlefield?
minds today.
What are you talking about?
And in this case, you know, this kid has like no personality. He reminds me of Titus. I played like all the way through this game, and it is quite a lengthy JRPG. I played all the way through this game, and I still don't remember any of the characters' names, which is a bad sign. But the point being that I remember it, and I still keep it on my Steam list on this hard drive today, because A, you can't download it anymore, and B, it's kind of unique, which again is, you know, worth preserving, and C, that, you know, The Last Remnant is, you know, a relic from a bygone era where people could just try their hand at new concepts, and even if it doesn't work, it's worth trying. We're just running through the typical tutorial stuff right now. Ooh, a sword. Did you know that you can equip the sword? And yeah, we'll look into that right now. And right now we literally just have these two characters, but it does become like army-based and squad-based, similar to something like a Fire Emblem Three Houses. You know, long before Fire Emblem Three Houses came out on the Switch. So I would say that, you know, maybe the Last Remnant was the testing ground for you know, the idea.
Let's do this!
Oh yeah, and there was this whole thing too with, I remember this, yeah, where you can't actually attack the enemy model like in a Persona game. You have to just do this weird swooshing thing to engage in fights. And yeah, you basically give them the order at the beginning, and then, you know, the army, in this case it's only two characters, the army would kind of automatically do what needs to be done. And it gets a little more complicated when you get spells and things of that nature, but it's more about, this game was more about creating optimal squad synergies than it was to, you know, min-max your individual characters in any meaningful way. It was a squad-based combat game before squad-based combat was popular in JRPGs, mostly thanks to Three Houses being the one other game that kind of does that, which was pretty good. But, you know, I just wanted this to be a, you know, fun little chat about, like, why people are nostalgic for 360 era games, even, like, the mid ones like this.
Something's
And the
wrong.
reason is, it really is just quite simple in terms of like, wow, it's a neat thing this game is doing that's different from other JRPGs. And so yeah, you get these one and done sort of rentals.
I wasn't expecting
It's
this.
essentially people being nostalgic for the rental era of video games, which is this.
Prepare yourself.
It is PS2, it is 360 era video games, because every single time you picked up a box and every single time you tried to play something, it was different than the game you played before. And what's changed now is that budgets are so large that instead of playing things, you know,
Come
a
on,
little
let's
risky
kick
with
some
titles
ass.
like this that might fail, which is granted.
Keep it up!
But even if they do fail, they come up with
I'll
interesting
make you
ideas
remember the name
that
Emma
can, you know,
Honeywell.
make their way into the next title. In this case, you know, Fire Emblem Three Houses was vastly popular, and it included a lot of squad-based stuff, similar to The Last Remnant, where each character represents one army of you, one dude. Literally, The Last Remnant did that like 10 years before Fire Emblem Three Houses. Although you could go all the way back to like Sudoku, I believe it was, you know, Final Fantasy Tactics. You could go take this concept back all the way to the PS1 era, but I'm talking about the rental era of video games, specifically
So, your
PS2 and
talisman's
360.
more than a fashion
and
accessory after all.
showing off a relic from Steam that you literally cannot download anymore. This game is impossible to own unless you preserve
My
it.
lord.
So either you own this game in terms of physical media, and you can play it on like an
did not have
Xbox
to
One
come all
backwards
this way for
compatible,
me.
or
Please,
you own an
accept
old
my
digital copy
apologies.
on your hard drive like I
Seeing
do,
you safe
and
is
you just like
apology enough.
transfer that over to
And
your
who
new
is
PC,
this?
because that's the only way you will ever get,
He
you know,
played.
the Last Remnant again. That's one of the problems with this digital distribution, is that it's actually possible to lose a lot of this originality with time. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it off there. I just wanted to have a fun chat about originality in video games, the rental era of game development, and how you could get these sort of one-off titles that were interesting and different, even if they weren't necessarily good. This is Eternal King, signing out.